All right, it looks like everybody's joined. Bless you. Everyone has joined who is supposed to be here, so I think we can go ahead and call to order, and I will offer my apologies for a lot of this delay, but I will be apologizing on behalf of the interstate and the accidents that made it delayed. So we'll now call this to order, and I will ask Johnny to please call roll.
Actually, it's Tim.
I'll ask Tim to please call roll.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I take roll, I just a quick update here that we now have a full board. We had some appointments by Governor Polis at the end of August, and so I want to welcome who we haven't met yet, Jill Carlson, representing the Colorado Geological Survey, and Matt Steen of Mountain Village, Colorado, to serve as a representative of the tourism and outdoor recreation industry. And I don't believe he's with us right now, but Dr. Jared Orsi from Fort Collins, Colorado, is a designee of the Executive Director of History Colorado. So congratulations. We welcome them on the board. Also, in addition to those appointments, Dr. Ishiwata and Dr. Gonzalez were reconfirmed. And so congratulations on that. And then Dr. Andrews, obviously you were also part of that appointment, but we have met you and good to see you again. Also today joining us in absence of our Attorney General Lauren Mercer is Attorney General Tessa Ward. So we welcome you, and I promised her we'd all be on our best behavior in Lauren's absence. So with that, Madam Chair, Senator Perry Will. Don't see the senator. Representative Morrow.
Here.
Good afternoon. Senator Exum. Do not see Senator Exum. Commissioner Chimino.
Present.
Council Member Stout.
Present.
Director Redhorse.
Present.
Deputy Director Carlson.
Present.
Program Director Matt Steen. Present. I know Matt is on the road. Appreciate you joining us there. Dr. Orsi, I believe, is not with us yet. Dr. Ishiwata.
Present.
Dr. Gonzalez. Do not see Dr. Gonzalez. Dr. Andrews.
Present.
Tim Mock is here. Deputy Director Bowman. Present. And oh, I'm sorry. And yeah, actually, Dave, I want to welcome you. You are now the representative, I understand, for the Department of Local Affairs. And so Dave Bowman's joining us, and good to see you and appreciate you being here, and welcome to the board.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And Director Wolf.
Present. Thank you.
So Madam Chair, I'm showing that we have 11 of 15 members and therefore a quorum.
Thank you. Since we have new folks, let's go ahead and do a round of introductions so that we all know who is here in this meeting and on this board. I'll start. I'm Anna Stout, and I'm from Grand Junction. I am the currently City Council member, the former mayor of Grand Junction, and currently have the honor of being the chair of this board. Let's go this direction. We'll do in the room first, and then we'll go online.
Thank you. Tim Mock, Deputy Director for the Department of Natural Resources, representing the Department of Natural Resources on this board.
Tessa Ward, Assistant Attorney General, filling in for Lauren Mercer, who is on her honeymoon.
Good afternoon, Catherine Redhorse, the Executive Director for the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs.
I'm Chris Aaron, I'm Communications Director at the Department of Natural Resources, and I cover communications for the board.
Jill Carlson, engineering geologist with the Colorado Geological Survey and Deputy Director. We are part of the Colorado School of Mines, a non-academic department at Mines, and I've been with the survey since 2000.
Oh,
thank you.
Johnny Abad, Executive Assistant for DNR and Administrator for this board.
Thank you. We'll go online then. We're going to go in the order that your Brady bunch boxes show up on our screen. So we'll start with you, Commissioner Chimino.
Richard Chimino. I'm a county commissioner from Grand County, so I'm a representative from local government.
Thank you. Tim.
Good afternoon. Tim Wolf, Director of the Colorado Tourism Office and also on the commission for the 250-150.
Great. Eric.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Ishiwata. I'm from Colorado State University from the Department of Ethnic Studies and the Office of Engagement and Extension.
Thank you. Christine and John. Are you audience members today?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Interested
Tom-
parties from La
Thank you.
Junta.
Great, thank you. Thomas Andrews.
Hi, I'm Thomas Andrews. I'm a professor of history and director of the Center of the American West at CU Boulder.
Thank you. Dave?
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Bowman. I'm the interim deputy director for DOLA and also the deputy director for the Division of Local Government within DOLA.
Great, thank you. Keith? Also a member of the public? Okay, Keith, you're also a member of the public? All right. Tisha.
Hi, I'm Tisha Morrow, a state representative from Pueblo County.
Thank you. Matt?
He's traveling, so.
We can't hear you, Matt, but we'll come back to you when you're not traveling. Jenny?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Jenny Runyon on the research staff for the U.S. Board on Geographic Names.
Thank you, Jenny. And then Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Bruner. I'm here representing USDA Forest Service, the Rocky Mountain region.
Thank you so much. And we do see journalists on here and we welcome you to this very public meeting. All right, let's continue with the agenda. We now move to agenda item 3 to review and approve the October agenda. Were there any additions, changes, or corrections needed to the August minutes? Oh, sorry. Let me back up. Are there any objections to the October agenda as it's laid out?
Motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion on the table by Deputy Director Mock. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a second from in the room. Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Redhorse. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on now to where I was jumping ahead to, and that is approving our August summary. Are there any corrections or additions to the August minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the August summary.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Wonderful. We have a motion to approve the August summary by Deputy Director Mock, and a second by Jill Carlson. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to our board member updates and announcements. And in this case, I will turn it over to Johnny to start with updates on our conference attendance. Or do you want to do that later?
No, we can do it now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, on
the conference.
On the conference, yeah. So thank you, Madam Chair. Tim Mock, Deputy Director for the Department of Natural Resources. The Council of Geographic Name Authorities, referred to as COGNA, held its annual conference this year in September in Columbia, Missouri. Colorado had a strong contingency. Myself and Johnny, as well as Council Member Stout and Commissioner Chimino, attended. I think that's the meeting. It was again another great opportunity to meet with our fellow naming authorities around the country. It was a pretty good turnout there in Missouri. Obviously, a lot of history given the Missouri River and Mark Twain, and so had a lot of local engagement and historical relevance provided by the team there. We met for, boy, it was roughly, I think, 3 days, Monday through Thursday, and including a tour around parts of the state. I think some of again, and I appreciate the U.S. Board of Geographic Names and Jenny and her team being such strong partners. It was nice again to connect with them. We've got some things particularly kind of brewing on the home front here with some proposals. We'll have more to come. The U.S. Board of Geographic Names is sorting that out, and we'll kind of provide some updates perhaps in the near future as that is worked out. That is a matter that the USBGN is meeting on later in November. But otherwise, I think another big update that we heard was on the Secretarial Order 3405 regarding the removal of derogatory names on our geographic features. As you know, this secretarial order came out roughly the same time as 3404 that we dealt with back in, what was that, 2002 or 3, I believe, Jenny. And there's been a committee that's been meeting to sort of identify the scope of derogatory names, and that's been a pretty healthy debate going forward. It continues to be a debate. Jenny might be able to help me out here a little bit, but I think that there were some recommendations that were forwarded on to perhaps the secretary to comment on, and so we still don't have our marching orders in terms of how we might deal with those derogatory names or what that all consists of just yet, but things seem to kind of continue to progress as that advisory committee continues to meet. We'll discuss it a little bit later in the agenda here, but the 2025 conference is coming to the state of Colorado, and so we look forward to hosting the conference. And it's good to have some of our colleagues out there to kind of get a sense of what that conference looks like, and start thinking about how we might make arrangements for our 2025 conference. And so, Jenny, I kind of turn it over to you here real quick in regards to that Secretarial Order 3405, and not sure if there's been any updates since.
Thank you, Tim. No, nothing really to report from the USBGN perspective. The last thing we heard was the same report you heard at the COGNA conference. As you said, they've been meeting regularly or occasionally, and all we really know is basically what is being posted at that committee's website. So if you haven't seen it, I'm happy to pop that link into the chat so folks can read it at their leisure. But we're not hearing anything more than the states are hearing at this point. It's sort of hurry up and wait, I suppose. So yeah, nothing to add at this point.
Great, thank you. I think the other item that was part of a conversation was how we think about all of these proposals that are coming to not only the USBGN but then to the various states, and I think we might be thinking about a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of asking the question, why do these things, why does a certain feature need to be named on federal maps as a question going forward? In other words, are we naming all of the unnamed features simply to name them all, and do they all actually need names? And so, in terms of reference points, what are their importance? And I think that's something that I think will continue to be a bit of a conversation between the USBGN and the states as we kind of wrestle with the ongoing naming proposals that continue to come in. And Ms. Runyon, did you have any comment on that, or did I characterize that correctly?
Yes, excellent job as always. Thank you, Tim. You're absolutely right. we did give a presentation at the Cogna conference to share with you all that were there a sort of very early draft of an attempt at an updated proposal form. As you know, we currently have a PDF that's out on our website that invites proponents to essentially fill in the boxes. None of the fields are technically mandatory just because it's a PDF. We'd like to convert it to more of an online form so there are some mandatory fields. And the idea is to really tighten up the process. We are getting far too many proposals that might be perceived as being, probably shouldn't say frivolous, but not well researched, not well thought through, somewhat self-serving on the part of the proponent, really with no evidence of local support. So really, really urging proponents in the future to read through our policies and principles and procedures and to maybe do a little bit more legwork on their behalf to solicit local support first, gauge community opinion, maybe seek tribal input first. Just basically do a lot more to set the groundwork and to find out that if these names that they're proposing are in fact going to be embraced by the community and not just the one individual who thinks something should be named because they can and because we've made it so easy. So we are inviting, obviously the state names authorities to weigh in because you are in many ways the first line of defense as far as having to review these proposals. So by all means, you'll be hearing more about this draft form as it moves along, and we invite any and every feedback from the states on what we can do better. So thank you for the opportunity to present on that at the Cogna conference. And maybe as we talk in future meetings, we'll have more to share. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you. And then I'll just turn it over to Council Member Stout or Commissioner Chimino if you've got any other updates that I should have provided.
Do you want to add any, Commissioner?
No additions. Thank you.
Agreed. Very thorough. Thanks, Tim. Are there any other board member updates or announcements to cover right now?
I have one. So this, so Catherine, today was, I just wanted to mention, was a historic days. President Biden issued an apology for the federal government's work in the federal Indian boarding schools. And I just wanted to mention that because it does impact all of the work that we do. And I appreciate Colorado dedicating funding to continue work and holding tribal consultations on the impacts that Indian boarding schools had within the state and within the community members. I also just wanted to thank the board for really continuing to work with tribal nations as we're looking at renaming proposals and how their voice is included in the renaming proposals. And so just wanted to mention that as, like I said, it's a historic day today.
Great, thank you. Congratulations. It is cool.
Any other updates from the board or announcements?
I would just like to point out that Senator Will, I thought I saw Senator Will on there. Did he just jump off? Oh, there he is. Yep, good to see you. Has joined the meeting.
Welcome, Senator.
Thank you.
Jenny, Jenny, are there any other USBGN updates you want to give us?
Thank you, Commissioner Stout. I can't think of anything, to be honest. We're just plugging away at new proposals that are coming in. The most recent quarterly review list was wrapped up and posted. No, you know me, I'll think of something before the end of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item 7. This is, I believe, going to be a quick item. This is consideration by the board to correct the spelling. And help me out with the pronunciation. Is it going from Baco to Boko? Buco? Boko?
Jenny,
we can call it for you.
I confess I'm not sure. I would assume Baco to Buco. We didn't ask for the pronunciation. We certainly can, but yeah.
That's all right. Yeah. We won't delay this any longer trying to figure out how to pronounce it when we know what spelling correction they're asking for. So is there any background that you want to provide on this, Tim?
Yeah, I think this is, I want to point this out. I think this is being brought to us via the USBGN, and it's a request from a member of the Buco family to correct the name of Boko Mountain in Eagle County to Buco. spelling is going to be OOCO Mountain. And it's simply a correction. We are not being asked to name or rename, but just make sure that this that the spelling is appropriately assigned for the federal registry going forward. So I don't know if we've got any members of the family present, but if so, maybe you could raise your hand or come off mute.
All right, seeing no one. Is there any further discussion by Senator Will?
Thank you. I'm familiar with that mountain, and the common usage around Eagle is Boco.
Good, Boco, great.
Boco. Yeah, I in the winter of 2008, we fed a lot of deer on that mountain, so I'm quite familiar with it.
Thank you. Any other discussion by the board on this request? Hearing none, I am prepared to entertain a motion as it relates to agenda item 7.
Madam Chair, I move that we correct the spelling of Boco Mountain to the appropriate spelling of BOCCO Mountain in Eagle County.
The reverse. BOOCO.
BOOCO, I'm sorry, thank you, in Eagle County as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the table by Deputy Director Mock to correct the spelling from BOCCO to BOOCO Mountain as presented, and we have a second by Ms. Carlson. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously, and we will suggest the correction of that spelling. For agenda item 8, this is final consideration in USBGN case 5961, the naming of an unnamed feature to Baines Draw. Deputy Director Mock, do you want to provide us the background on that?
Sure. This case number 5961 was introduced, I believe, at our May meeting. It's a proposal to make official the commemorative name Baines Draw for a 4.2 mile long valley in Montezuma County. The valley trends west-southwest to join Sandstone Canyon on land managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The proponent, whose surname is Bain, reports that the valley has been known as Baines Draw or Baines Canyon since 1919. Eugene Bain and Roland Bain homesteaded the area between 1919 and 1926. Eugene is buried in Sunnyside Cemetery in Lewis, 5.5 miles southwest of the source of the stream. We did have outreach to the Montezuma County and the 574 federally recognized tribes via the USBGN. I know that our assistant director for tribal outreach also had reached out to the Southern Ute Mountain tribes without, I don't believe we have not received any further feedback from them. It is beyond the 120 days since this was introduced. And so I would recommend that we proceed with this unless there's any further discussion or questions or concerns.
Is there any further discussion or questions or concerns about this item? Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I was trying to clarify on the, I mean, it looked like when this was first discussed, there was some discussion over whether whether some background on the folks that this is named after, whether some background research needed to be done, but I couldn't see any I couldn't see any notice of that in the documents. So I was just curious about whether that had been conducted or not.
I was curious about that as well. That was former Chair Gonzalez and Dr. Way who had offered to do that additional research, but there wasn't anything in the 826 update about that. Do we know if there was anything additional?
There was not. I reached out to her for this meeting and she was unable to conduct further research. We did have, because Dr. Way left, we didn't quite yet have the replacement for Dr. Way. And then since Jared Orsi was appointed, the two of them had not gotten together to do the research prior to this meeting.
Okay. Does that impact any of the board's consideration as of today? In other words, would anybody like to table this until a future meeting, or is the board comfortable moving forward with consideration today? It is slated for final consideration.
I just think for consistency reasonings, all right, and if we had that request prior to do the research, that perhaps tabling at this time in order for the research to be conducted would be consistent in previous practices.
Thanks. Any other feedback from board members? Any opposing view to tabling this? Dave?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the travel review process. I mean, just given the location and the fact that we didn't get any comment from the tribes and being new to this process, do we typically get comment back, or what? I'm kind of curious about the research and how intense that back and forth is with the tribal nations as part of this process.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. And I'm going to ask for a little bit of assistance here from Director Redhorse, perhaps, but DNR does have an assistant director for tribal engagement, Stacy Coleman. Unfortunately, Stacy was involved in an accident. She's doing fine, but she is recovering. And so she's not here with us today. She does meet with tribal representatives quite frequently, and I think reminds them of the list or brings to them items that they want to consider. Usually there's an indication that the tribes will, if there's an item that they are very interested in, they will usually indicate that they would like some time to kind of think about this one or provide comments or feedback. I believe, and I don't know if Director Redhorse has any other information, that this has been brought to their attention, but there hasn't been any follow-up or identification of interest to comment on this.
And I agree with all that you have stated. And I think the only caveat, there's that reminder of if the tribes do, right, they have 120 days, I think, right, from the last policy procedure for them to respond or submit any kind of opinion.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dave, last month, we actually put in our process document a requirement that we wait 120 days from introduction of these. And then, like I said, it's not just a matter that we reach out to the tribes just once, but Stacy, who meets with their representatives quite frequently, brings up the list of pending proposals to seek their input on some items, which are not calendar today, are because we actually know that there is some serious interest for the tribes to be engaged in the conversation, provide some feedback. And so we want to honor that. So we do try and be mindful of the tribes and obviously the exceptional number of varied requests that they receive on various items throughout the state of Colorado.
And just in terms of the 120-day response time for this one, that 120 days would have been completed in September. That doesn't mean that we close the book and move forward. And certainly, given the transition of board members, I think it seems very appropriate that we consider a continuation of this to allow for that outreach to Dr. Way and Dr. Gonzalez, and to do follow up with the tribal representatives. So in that vein, unless there's further discussion, I'm prepared to entertain a motion to continue this item to a future agenda. Don't make Tim do all of the motions. He's carrying a lot. You're not too new. Okay. You're an official board member now.
Motion to table the agenda item regarding naming Baines Draw.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. That was Dave Bowman. So we have a motion on the table by Jill Carlson to continue USBGN case 5961 regarding the naming of an unnamed feature to Baines Draw, and a second by Dave Bowman. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously, and that will be continued. Next, agenda item 9. Jump from 9 to 11. Did you notice that?
Sorry.
That's okay. Agenda item 9 is final consideration on USBGN case 6017 from Poison Lake to Golden Valley Lake. Deputy Director, you want to give us a rundown on this?
Sure. So again, this was another one that was introduced in May, or at our May meeting. It's a proposal to change the name of Poison Lake, a 6-acre lake in southeastern Larimer County, to Golden Valley Lake. The proponent, whose property includes the alkaline lake, reports that it is not poisonous and there are no health issues for livestock and wildlife. The proposed name refers to the lake's location near Golden Valley Road. Poison Lake has been named on the USGS topographic map since 1962. It is shown but not named on the official Larimer County highway map. We did have support from Larimer County. We also, via Assistant Director Coleman, reached out to the tribes, had not received any feedback specific to this. And I just wanted to clarify from the previous conversation, we were in touch with Stacy on these matters to see if there was any tribal input in her absence, and there has not been any follow-up from the tribes. I do know that we have the proponent whose property it sits on, Mr. James Keith, here. And Madam Chair, if you want to invite Mr. Keith to say a few words, we'd certainly like to welcome that.
Absolutely. Mr. Keith, are you able to unmute yourself and provide us any additional input you'd like us to consider? Ask him to unmute.
The research revolved around the Native American teepee rings, which are hundreds of feet south of the lake, which Larimer County has preserved. We believe the name Poison Lake might have been put on since it's full of wildlife down from Estes Park to discourage hunters from entering the large 500-acre ranch. It's just a negative name that has no bearing. It is a native lake, a natural lake, not a dammed up lake. And it is alkali, although there is a freshwater inlet into it, which is where the wildlife does water. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keith.
Madam Chair, we do also have a note here, similar to the last issue there, that Dr. Gonzalez and perhaps Dr. Wade would do some additional historical research. It'd be kind of interesting to understand what that might be. They are not here, and we did not receive any update in their absence or since then. In this case, we are not naming this after an individual, so I would just kind of point that out. So there wouldn't be research done into the background of an individual necessarily. Dr. Wade did kind of identify in his last meeting there that, well, if the lake is not poisonous, then it shouldn't be so named. And as I mentioned, we had not received any additional feedback or expressed interest from the tribes.
Any discussion by the board about this Hearing none, is the board comfortable moving forward with a consideration at this point? Hearing neither yeses or nos, I'm going to take that as a potential yes and simply open up for a motion.
Motion to rename Poison Lake to Golden Valley Lake.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table to, in case number 6017 of the USBGN, to recommend a name change from Poison Lake to Golden Valley Lake. That motion was made by Jill Carlson and seconded by Thomas Andrews. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously once again. All right, that brings us to agenda item 11. This is final consideration on USBGN 5937, naming an unnamed feature, Mount Hughes. Deputy Director.
Good afternoon again here. This was also introduced at our May meeting earlier this year. It's a proposal to name a feature Mount Hughes for a currently unnamed 10,884 foot summit in Larimer County and Roosevelt National Forest, approximately 35 miles west-northwest of Fort Collins. The proposal was submitted by Representative Red Feather Historical Society. The name would honor Colonel John C. Hughes, who is designated by the proponent as a longtime and illustrious resident of Red Feather Lakes Village. Colonel Hughes is recognized as one of the 50 most decorated veterans in American history, fought 3 wars, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, received 79 medals and citations, including 2 Distinguished Service Medal Awards, 5 Purple Hearts, the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and the Medal of St. Maurice, the patron saint of infantry. He was also nominated for a Congressional Medal of Honor, but reportedly turned it down. Hughes was most decorated serviceman in the 100-year history of the 29th Infantry Regiment, which in 2000 made Hughes an honorary colonel commander for life. I believe there's also some information in your packets about his presence within the community. Similarly, I know that we kind of also flagged this for some additional research. We do not have, I don't think we had that follow-up or verification. We do have the reports that were provided by the proponents. And again, we did reach out via Ms. Coleman to see if there was any feedback from the Southern Ute or the Ute Mountain Ute Indian tribes. And we have not received that any further feedback or interest to comment on that.
Thank you. And I'll note as well on this one that the 120-day response time would have ended on September 16th. So we have met the new threshold that was adopted at our last meeting. Is there any discussion by the board on this consideration?
I guess I would just kind of point out there, and this is supported by the Larimer County and the Red Feather Historical Society. So I'd point that out. I guess I'd be kind of curious about the comment there, looking back about the confirmation of the historical research, given the information that is part of our packet. So I'd certainly be interested if there's any feedback in regards to the need to actually do our own historical research here and what that might look like.
Do any members of the board feel that sufficient historical research has not been conducted to be able to make a decision at this time? All right. Is there any further discussion on this before I open up for a motion?
This is Dave. I would actually kind of like to hear from the historians on how we view the local historical societies versus our internal research and what trumps what and how those things are considered.
I would also just echo that. I think, right, like, how are we instilling consistent practices and going back to consistency, right? So if we follow what has been given to us, which is fine, or do we want to include our own research as well? And I know without our two commissioners here, I would love to get their input on that to see, right, like, how are we creating just precedents for future votes?
Is there a sense then among board members that we should table this one as well?
I'll say this, that part of our research, typically we identify reaching out to local historical societies for their knowledge and expertise for the region. But beyond that, I'd actually look towards some of the historians here and would defer to them about additional research or what that might look like or how they would consider the historical society's input in regards to this matter and our consideration of it.
Well,
okay.
as a historian, I guess you were maybe in part asking me. I mean, we could always do more research, but I think the question's what that would, what we would expect to gain from that, and also what the past procedures have been and what the requirements are. So I can't really speak to most of those since I'm new. So I'm not really sure what our burden is when it comes to demonstrating that a record such as Colonel Hughes is laudatory.
On a personal level, I don't, I am a member of the board certainly, but I don't feel that I would be any level of qualified to make to do research that would somehow give me a different conclusion than what the Red Feather Historical Society has provided to us, and their letter of support carries a lot of weight for my decision-making process. But I'm certainly comfortable if the board is not comfortable tabling this. But if we're to do that, my request would be that we have a very specific deliverable in terms of what kind of research we want to, what is it that we need to be able to consider that is supplemental to what we've received. Rich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to offer some practices of this board in the past. I've been on the board since the beginning, as several other of my board members have. Like Thomas Andrews mentioned, we have responsibilities on this board. More historical research can always be done. However, we applied and were appointed by the governor to serve on this board, and we do due diligence, and we may table this, but at some points we make our recommendation to the governor and call it sufficient, call it good enough. And as far as we do not have a practice of a state historical association or a national historical organization trumping the locals. What we've done in the past, Dave Bowman, is we just sort of see, okay, what evidence was found? The locals may have found a really key piece. The more larger organization may find a key piece. So I think we base them on evidence rather than which organization found the research and made a recommendation. And I'm all for listening if there's a concern about tabling, but I'll just voice as one board member, I'm ready to make the motion on this to recommend. But however, we'll see what other discussion takes place.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. Shiwata?
Yeah, I would just also remind that we have an unsettled conversation within the board around the appropriateness of naming after individuals versus non-individuals. And I think that there's been some valid conversations in the past over the potential risks that come around using individuals with unknown or complicated histories for these names.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, in the housing world and, in my role of local government, we do tend to let the locals carry a little bit of extra weight in terms of, what if they're going to rebuild in a historic district or something like that. The only thing that's causing me concern is that we've got this on the May agenda. We have specifically said that Chair Gonzalez and Dr. Wade will do additional historical research and verification. And since we don't have that and they're not present, then that just causes me a little bit consternation of moving forward when we've said we were going to do this thing in the past.
Thank you. Any other comments or feedback?
Yeah, I appreciate, if I could, Madam Chair, Commissioner Chimino.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I forget who said it now, but about names. Oh, Eric did. Eric said about names. So yeah, I guess our bylaws don't prohibit the go ahead and recommending a name. We have, been careful about that. We've tried to avoid it for the most part, but our bylaws don't prohibit it. And we have recommended some names for some features based on the history that happened at that site. This site history is a little, he retired there, I guess, or or he lived in the area, was real active. But yeah, I don't think this board has, anyway, we just don't prohibit it. So this to me is a case where I think it's appropriate to go ahead and recommend a name, but other board members might feel differently. Healthy board is a board that isn't always unanimous, so I welcome others' perspectives, but I just wanted to voice how we have done that in the past and our bylaws don't prohibit it now.
Thank you, Commissioner.
For consistency, Jill Carlson, thank you. For consistency with tabling a previous agenda item a little while ago, I think we probably should table this. If we said we were going to do research on that one, but we didn't, and we tabled it, we probably should do the same with this agenda item. Table it.
Thank you. And I'm certainly not opposed to tabling it. I do see some difference between this one and the last one in that this one was supplemented by,
yes,
through the application by a number of sort of pre-researched items. So I think it's a little different, but I am not personally opposed to tabling this. I'm also not opposed to moving forward with a recommendation, which is why I'm going to open this up and let the board either provide additional input or make a motion as to further action on this. And we'll let the motion come from the screen, Thomas.
Oh, this is further discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess, so I mean, it seems like Eric has raised sort of a point about personal names and sort of a general objection. And I'm just wondering whether there's any specific grounds for concern about this particular person and his record. I mean, is there a certain question or set of questions that we have regarding him? Because I agree that, I think that this is a more substantive, I mean, we get a lot more information here. There is some historical research. I wouldn't really say that that's quite analogous to the Baines case.
Yeah, that's a good point, Doctor. I would kind of go back to the renaming of what was the proposal to rename? The proposal was that we considered renaming Dead Mexican Gulch to Jose Velarde, and through the information that was provided in this example, there was a number of inconsistencies that were identified through like the newspaper articles that were provided in terms of the spelling and who this individual was. And we did some follow-up research that also discovered that he was a bit of a scoundrel and committed some murders himself. Allegedly. And so in that case, that's where the county stepped in. That was Garfield County, and they felt that they couldn't support naming it after that individual. And this took us several months actually to work through that information. But I think in that packet that we had a lot of inconsistencies or reasons to look at this and understand who this individual was. And we ended up renaming it Lost Sheepherders Gulch, which represented the sheepherders that were operating kind of in that area during that time. So, yeah, I tend to agree. I just don't know what or where we would go for, and I appreciate that, yeah, we did flag this for additional research. And I'm just going back through what we've documented here in the notes. Even Dr. Way said this should be approved given his distinguished record. But then obviously we say we should also do our own historical research. I'm just not sure what that would be unless that was some type of background checks, perhaps, that we're not necessarily capable. It seems like this was an individual of outstanding character and distinguished service. I do think that, Dr. Ishiwara continues to raise a point that consistently comes before this board. We do in our process document identify the U.S. Board of Geographic Names and their processes for commemorative names. They don't disallow them, but I do agree with our approach in terms of we want to be extra careful when we name geographic features. And I'll admit, in some cases, there are instances where I wonder, should we be naming geographic features? And this is personal comment after individuals altogether, but we do receive those, and we will continue to receive them, and those still fall within the guidelines. As much as I might feel one way, I don't know that I feel strongly enough that I would go the distance that we would implement some type of policy not to name geographic features after people if presented, but we should do so rarely, I think, in under good cause.
And go ahead.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was like, I really appreciate this conversation. I think my perspective when we're looking at historical documents and history is that there's always one perspective or various perspectives that can be led, right? And I think, right, being a Native person myself, right, and reading history, being taught history, that we have learned that not all perspectives of history are necessarily taught to us or documented in English, maybe speaking historical documents. And so I really appreciate when we take the time to review and research a little bit more. And I think where I'm coming a little bit more hesitant to move forward in this specific one, and I apologize, I did miss the last board meeting, was that we had stated, those two commissioners had stated that they would complete additional research, and they are not here right now for them to say, like, we did do it and this is what we found. And I just feel out of respect that we table it more towards that and then we can further having these conversations of what are we looking for when we're asking for that historical research and where we looked. I hope that we're looking in a variety of different places when we're conducting that research.
Certainly, and I think, again, I am not opposed to a continuance of this one as well. I do want to address the name thing specific to this one, but not specific to who they're proposing. But in terms of the proponent, when the proponent submitted this under the prevailing rules. We don't have any policy in place prohibiting commemorative naming. So I think to move the goalpost without good reason on the simply denying this petition, this request, because we decide now or in some near future that we don't want to do commemorative names, I think that is unfair to this proponent. Separate the consideration of who the individual that we research really ends up seeming to be, since we'll never know exactly everything there was to know about somebody from decades ago. But I would not feel comfortable denying this only on the basis of it being a name, because when the proposal was submitted by the proponent, it was a permissible request. Commissioner Chmino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And last thing I wanted to say is just for the new board members mostly, um, yeah, we just this body doesn't have much of a staff. There's a few people. Johnny, they actually organizes us. We have Stacy. Tim puts a lot of hours in. Us volunteer board members, we do sometimes travel. We sometimes do research, but as we volunteer to do that, there's no real like. It's hard to pin that responsible button on somebody and expect a delivery from a paid employee. So it's a bit of a kind of do what research we can, but this is a game of volunteers and pickup. But maybe we could lobby in the future to see if this body gets a legislative budget that's kind of sufficient to do the thorough work we may prefer, but it's just not in place right now. And I want to voice that I think we've done for this one is sufficient, but I want to respect my board members. I'm fine with tabling this for a future date. And that's just something we all got to work through when we feel whatever's been done is sufficient. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, I would say that my inclination in the absence of other information, I'm a veteran from a family of veterans. I also respect locals and, what they want for their community. So my inclination would be to approve this. However, because we have the specific language in here from our past records indicating that more research is going to be done, and we don't have access to that research, I would table it only for that reason, not so much because of the name or because I don't think it's going to be appropriate. But, I'd like to come back and hear from Dr. Way rather than approve it and then find out that, he did some research and comes back and says something that causes us to maybe change our minds.
Thank you. Well, one complication that I want to point out here is that we are going to need to assign this because Dr. Way is no longer a board member. And while we may be able to ask him the favor of contributing, I don't think it's reasonable for us to count on that. So it would be helpful since there were two people who offered to do this research and both are not here. One will not be here in the future. I think that for us to table this, it would be extremely prudent for us to have somebody else volunteer to do some additional research as well. Because I don't want to get back here in another meeting and table it for the same reason because we don't have Dr. Way anymore and because Dr. Gonzalez wasn't at this meeting. So is there anybody who'd be willing to take on that research?
If I were to hear today from one of the historians that the Red Feather Historical Society's work is sufficient, I would be ready to move forward with this today.
Madam Chair, why don't we consult with Dr. Gonzalez and maybe she and Dr. Way have gotten some research, perhaps not, but we'll consult and maybe find a way to do a little bit additional exploration into this.
Thank you, Tim. All right, then I think at this point I'm hearing consensus for a continuation of this. So I would entertain a motion to that effect or any motion that any board member wishes to make.
I'll move the table till we confer with Dr. Gonzalez.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Mr. Bowman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director. All right, we have a motion on the table by Mr. Bowman to continue the final consideration of USBGN case 5937, considering an unnamed feature and naming it Mount Hughes. That motion was made by Mr. Bowman. We have a second by Director Redhorse. All those in favor of tabling this, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and we will continue this to a future meeting. All right, does anybody need a break? Or are we good to keep going?
I'd like to just make a real quick point of clarification. I'm not proposing a new policy that we consider either ruling in or ruling out using individuals' names for naming purposes. I'm just raising the point that we've had this conversation in the past, and therefore if we are going to move forward with considerations about an individual name, I think the responsibility is probably even greater for us to make sure that we're comfortable with that name and our process on landing on that decision before moving forward, as opposed to something that's more general, like a Golden Valley or something else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well put. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I didn't see anybody want to take me up on the break, so we will continue to agenda item 12. This is introduction of the USBGN case 6095, which would be an unnamed feature being named Miller Pond. Deputy Director, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so this is up for introduction, and this is a proposal to name an unnamed feature to Miller Pond. It would be a new commemorative name for an unnamed feature. It's proposed for a 3-acre beaver pond located within the White River National Forest, Holy Cross Wilderness in Eagle County. The name would commemorate the proponent's father, Kenneth Miller. The proponent wrote, "This pond is unnamed, and I believe my father's name would be perfect complement to this geologic feature. His ashes were spread there in 2005 per his request, as it was his favorite place. And he had been visiting this location since 1975 when he and his uncle first discovered it. His father honored the site with much reverence and appreciation." Johnny, let me just ask you, do we have the proponent on today or?
Mr. Miller?
No,
I don't see him.
Okay. You have the information here in your packet. This one is particularly of interest or of some sensitivity for a couple of reasons. One, it is naming a feature in a wilderness area, which the USBGN policy for here wilderness area, and I don't, maybe Miss Runyon, I'm getting this wrong, that this is USBGN policy, but wilderness area, Geographic Names and Wilderness Act 1964, Congress establishes the Wilderness Preservation System. The act characterizes wilderness as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, and where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. Although wilderness designations are a modern invention, a fundamental characteristic of elemental wilderness is that the cultural overlay of civilization is absent. I don't want to say that we haven't named or renamed features. So we have not named an unnamed feature in wilderness. We did with, I believe Mount Blue Sky is in the wilderness area there. So we did take that on. But we did not have support from the county commissioners, specifically citing the USBGN and the Holy Cross Wilderness area and that overlay. Also, we've got input from the federal U.S. Forest Service, also that is non-supportive of this proposal. Ms. Runyon, did you have anything else for us in regards to the USBGN policies?
Thank you, Tim. No, you did an excellent job there. You've essentially summarized the BGN's wilderness policy. And yes, it states that the BGN will not approve any new names for unnamed features in federally designated wilderness areas or areas under consideration for wilderness status, unless the proponent can provide a compelling reason to make an exception. And as you noted, both the county and the Forest Service, which is, of course, the land management agency, have recommended against this particular proposal, citing the wilderness policy. And as far as Mount Blue Sky, for example, the wilderness policy does not apply to name changes because the feeling is that the feature already has a name. And so changing it to something else does not further trammel the landscape with human impact. It's already got a name. So it's really a case of not adding new names. So anytime a feature's in the wilderness, we do ask the proponent to address that. And then we ask the county and you all and the Forest Service in this case to, if they see that exception is warranted. Now, of course, that's a federal policy. CGNEB is not required to follow federal guidelines as far as wilderness policy. So you could decide potentially that this is acceptable for state approval. But again, for federal use, the BGM would have to decide if they see a compelling reason to make an exception.
Thank you, Jenny.
So with that, I'll just kind of kick this off if you don't mind, Madam Chair. Given the opposition that this is in wilderness, typically what we would do is just introduce these as a first step, would identify any additional research that we might, or outreach that we might want to look into these. I will say, given that you don't have local county support, and that this is in a wilderness area, I could see, again, this is my personal views, that we might make exceptions for indigenous names of features in our wilderness areas, but I do not find a compelling reason to move this proposal forward. And I would entertain a conversation whether there is a compelling reason, or if we should just provide a non-recommendation on this.
And in the interest of time, I will ask only for differing opinions. And if there are differing opinions, I would love to hear those, but if we have general agreement, rather than having everybody repeat the same thing that Deputy Director Mock just said, then I would be prepared to entertain a motion. Commissioner.
That's a good policy, Madam Chair. I just spent several time on the last item restating things, but I actually differ. I differ on this one. So appreciate your policy. Yeah, I mean, it's a goofy one. It's probably going to be rejected by the national board, but we're not the national board. If I was going to advise that applicant, I would say, do not highlight he's your dad. We don't, name our ancestors, but he did highlight the work and the care and the visiting and the frequency of. It's an unnamed feature where a person visited a lot and cared for it on some level. What measure did he have to have a Medal of Honor and 29 military citations in the Vietnam War somewhere else to be worthy of a name, or just he liked the site? So if we vote to reject it, which I understand that rationale, I'll probably vote no. I said earlier, a healthy board is a board that's not always unanimous, and I do understand the rationale for rejecting it, but I would like to push this to the governor. It's an unnamed feature. Give it a name. It's worthy of the work that was done by the individual, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? I think I'll add that even though we're not bound by the forest policy or the USGS policy, I do take local input quite seriously, and I think the commissioner's opposition is in and of itself sufficient to give me pause, but for all of the reasons stated by Deputy Director Mock and in our packet, I am supportive of a no vote on this one. Is there any other discussion before I open up the floor for a motion? Hearing none, is there anybody who wishes to make a motion at this point?
I would make a motion that the board recommends to the governor that we do not recommend approval of naming Miller Pond an unnamed feature within the Holy Cross Wilderness in Eagle County.
Is there a second to the do not recommend approval motion?
Second.
Thank you. Is that you, Senator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion on the table to not recommend approval to the governor to name an unnamed feature Miller Pond inside the Holy Cross Wilderness area. A second by Senator Will. Is there any discussion on this motion? Jenny.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I got ahead. I'll wait. I have one more comment on the wilderness policy, but I think it would be appropriate after the vote, if that's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? We will We will take a vote now. All in favor of the recommendation not to approve, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Commissioner?
Nay, nay.
All right, motion passes by majority vote. Jenny, let's hear your comment about the wilderness rule.
Thank you. And as you said, let's respect time here, and I'm going to go ahead and take more of your time. Just a quick comment, follow up on something Tim said earlier about the wilderness policy. And it is true that the policy also states that if a name in published use or potentially local use predates the establishment of that particular wilderness, the BGN might well make an exception. And that certainly would apply to native names. If it can be shown that, say, a tribe had a name for a feature before, in this example, say the Holy Cross Wilderness was established, then that would be considered a valid, most likely a valid exception. And the same here, if the name Miller Pond was on a map pre, say, 1975 or whenever the wilderness was established, then that would be a factor in the discussion. So you're right, the wilderness policy sort of went into effect and applies to the date that particular wilderness was established. So if a name does predate that, that should be a factor, which isn't the case here. So thank you. Hope that helped.
It does. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
All right, we're at agenda item 13. This is introduction of case USBGN 6098. And this is considering an unnamed feature and naming it Dillon Lake. Deputy Director, take it away.
Okay, so this is yes, as laid out, a proposal to name an unnamed feature Dillon Lake. It's submitted by an alpine hiker to apply the locally used name Dillon Lake to the 9.6 acre lake in White River National Forest below Pacific Peak and at the head of an unnamed tributary to Spruce Creek. The USGS National Map base map shows that Spruce Creek Trail ends at this lake, but the U.S. Forest Service maps do not confirm this. The proponent states the name is used by alpine hikers colloquially to refer to this lake. I'm not sure where it came from, but the proponent and hiking friends often use the name in contrast to the nearby Lake Dillon, which is much larger. For example, do you want to hike to Dillon Lake or Lake Dillon? He believes that labeling this lake on maps will encourage hikers to attempt to reach it and to increase its popularity. Furthermore, naming the lake would encourage more formal footpath and perhaps a bridge to be developed across the nearby lake. There was some initial outreach done by the USBGN. The Summit County Board of Commissioners strongly object to the proposed lake that it has no historical, cultural, geographic, or natural significance to this area of Summit County that is south of the town of Breckenridge in the Upper Blue Basin. Dillon Lake is also very close in name and proximity to Dillon Reservoir, which already exists in Summit County. And then the White River National Forest, if I'm correct in this, somebody can correct me if I'm misreading this, the proposed Dillon Lake would not conform to BGN principles and policies regarding duplicative names. The guidance clearly states, while the name duplication in very familiar names in close proximity is undesirable, well-established geographic names should not be changed unless there is evidence of strong public support for the change. And the guidance continues stating the BGN will normally disapprove a name proposed for I'm sorry, I just lost my place. Will normally disapprove a name proposed for a geographic feature when, in the BGN's opinion, the name is so similar to that of a nearby name feature that it will cause confusion. And I don't know that I see any additional research, so I'll leave it at that.
Great. Discussion by the board.
Madam Chair, I'll lead off on this one again here. While I feel strongly about the policy about naming features in wilderness areas. I don't know, again, that I find much compelling reason to move this necessarily forward, given I do believe this is a very duplicative lake or name. The Summit County Board of Commissioners opposition, as well as it looks like the White River National Forest, if I have that correct, and their opposition to this. I also don't find the reason to name this as compelling. I do not know that we need, in any stretch of the imagination, to be naming features to encourage trails or people or human disturbance to occur simply because it is there, and that it should be done mindfully through our land managers and subject matter experts in wildlife management and such. And so therefore, I just do not find this compelling at all to further move forward, and would kind of cut the review short and go so that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other comments? Would anybody like to make an argument to move this forward, either with additional research or additional communication with the proponent? All right, seeing head shaking and hearing no one, I would entertain a motion regarding the introduction of case 6098. And don't make Tim do all of them.
I'll make the motion to decline this case.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate that we went from one Tim to the other Tim. So,
Second.
Great. We have a motion on the table to decline approval of the proposal under USBGN case number 6098, naming an unnamed feature Dillon, D-Y-L-A-N, Lake. That motion was made by Tim and Wolf and seconded by Jill Carlson. Any discussion on this motion? All right, all in favor of the motion to decline, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes. Was there a nay? No. Okay, that passes unanimously then. All right, let's move to USBGN case number 6113, Pingree Park to Sewell Park.
Madam Chair, I wonder if we ought to take this and the next agenda item together, since they are related, and I think that the conversation will be very similar around the two of them.
I would very much agree with that. So I will call that item as well. So we're now considering items 14 and 15, which are USBGN case numbers 6113 and 6116.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. We've got a proposal or two proposals here. USBGN case 6113, renaming Pingree Park to Sewell Park, and then introduction of USBGN case 6116, renaming Pingree Hill to Soleil Hill. Case summary here is to propose the name change of the Pingree Park and to Soleil. I guess I'm gonna call a friend here if we've got a correct pronunciation, so I can be consistent here. Dr. Andrews, thank you.
I met the great grandnephew of Silas Soul this weekend, and that's the correct pronunciation, is Soul.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, so I'll just kind of read from the case summary here from 6113. This proposal was submitted by a representative of the No Pingree Task Force, along with another, to rename Pingree Hill, located 11.5 miles to the northeast. Pingree Park has been labeled on the USGS topographic map since 1916 and was referenced in an etymology text published in 1930. According to an article in the Coloradan, the park is named after George Pingree. who trapped in the area after the Sand Creek massacre. At the northern end of the flat is Colorado State University Mountain Campus, which in 2015 was renamed from Pingree Park Mountain Campus. The director of the Native American Cultural Center at CSU stated at the time, this opportunity to remove any association with George Pingree is a healing and an awakening for all who learn at and experience the mountain campus, particularly Native youth and Native CSU students. Further details regarding George Pingree and Silas Soul, see the Soul Hill proposal. It's going to take me a sec to get to that here.
114.
114.
Wait, yeah, 114. This continuation from 13.
All right, there we go. Okay. The proposed replacement name would commemorate Captain Silas Soul, who lived from 1838 to 1865, who refused orders to participate in the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864. The proponent of the change representing the No Pingree Task Force states, we want to honor Soul for his courage on the battlefield and for daring to speak the truth during military investigation. Furthermore, the name would erase the dishonorable name of George Pingree and replace it with integrity of Soul. The Facebook page for the group states, the No Pingree Task Force is a community effort to remove George Pingree's name from local landmarks. Then you have the information there of the information that is gathered from the proposal that everybody has in their packets. So I will leave it at that right now. And looks like these have support from Larimer County, the No Pingree Task Force, Colorado State University Dean Emeritus, and Jenny Arndt.
All right. Discussion.
And I would just say that again, and to remind those that are new on the board, typically what we do is we will introduce these proposals. This has been the rare occasion where we have voted on two that were during their introduction phase. Typically, this will start our clock for public outreach, identify the desire to reach out to who. Also, it will give us the opportunity to reach out to the tribes and allow Stacy Coleman also to go forward working with the Ute tribes here in Colorado to get any input. So with that, that's all I've got to say at this moment.
Great. So in addition to the tribal outreach, which we will do, that's part of our process anyways, is there anything else that the board wants to discuss now or would like to request in terms of research or outreach or any other information needed for future consideration of these two cases?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just think in addition to the tribal outreach with the two Ute tribes, that we're also including outreach to the three Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes that were directly impacted from the Sand Creek Massacre. So with the Northern Cheyenne, the Northern Arapaho, and the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, they can definitely assist Stacy in that.
Wonderful. We will make sure Stacy has that information and knows that you're a resource for her in doing that. Anything else? Yes, Dr. Schwa.
Yeah, in the supporting materials, there is a statement from the director of the CSU's Native American Cultural Center, Ty Smith, saying that he definitely, it's clear that he supports the removal of Pingree, but there's not clarity for me of where he stands in terms of replacing it with Soul. So he may very well be 100% supportive of that, but it would be helpful for me if somebody could circle back and see if the second part of this proposal has the equal amount of support from Director Smith.
Thank you. We will ensure that happens. I see Johnny writing it down. Any other information that Mr. Andrews? Is it Dr. Andrews?
Either way, I mean, I have a PhD, so you can call me doctor. But
It's doctor, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really supportive of this in principle. I'm also mindful though that we've got Silas Stoll, we've got Joseph Kramer, and in the sort of larger process of renaming related to Sand Creek, I do wonder whether it would be appropriate to have sort of a larger strategy. Because these are the two main named folks we have, and so I'm not sure if it's appropriate to sort of have a larger plan here. Um, but these are names that other folks may be wanting to use for renaming other features. And I'm not sure if that's relevant or not, but it did occur to me, so I wanted to bring that up.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do agree with that, and I do think part of that is that within the tribal outreach, so they may have another proposed name that they want to recommend to this board as well. And so I just want to, I guess, encourage the board to keep an open mind, and if we are receiving other proposals from tribal nations specifically to this geographic location, that we just keep an open mind about that.
Yeah, and the thing that I'll also just bring up for our context in this, the board, what's brought before us for consideration is a proposal, two proposals in this case. And what we are ultimately considering, what we're ultimately ruling on, is whether or not to make a recommendation based on the specific proposal. So our board is not tasked with finding other names or making recommendations for substitute names. Certainly during our outreach, and during our research, something else may come up. And in that case, we can go back to the proponent or proponents and present them with that and get their feedback and their input. But ultimately what we're deciding, this is the proposal or the proposals before us. And we're really tasked with giving an up or down on that on recommendations regarding that proposal. So that may help for some of our newer board members. It does take a little bit of the pressure to make it perfect off of us, because we're not here to try to find something better. If we find as a board that the proposal doesn't fit, doesn't meet the muster of our consideration, then we can turn it back to the proponent to either submit a new one and start the process all over, or potentially make an amendment to their proposal. So I don't know, Dr. Andrews, if that clarifies anything in terms of what our role might be in a broader strategy, because we really are just considering a proposal at a time.
I mean, do we ever need to consider duplication or that there's a sort of multiplicity of names? Or I mean, multiplicity of uses of the same name?
We do.
Yes. Yeah, that is something to take under consideration. Again, it's on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, there are times where certain, I think even in the last one, where similar names cause levels of confusion. We've got these geographic features are very important in terms of our backcountry search and rescue, for example, identifying those. That being said, we also did last month rename unnamed features Plunge Point and Plunge Mesa in Mesa County, Palisade. And so again, it's kind of case by case, but that is one of those things that we do look out for.
Thank you.
So in the case of both 6113 and 6116, unless there's any further discussion on this, I would entertain one single motion to move these to a future agenda for consideration.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to move and repeat whatever you said to move to the next agenda.
Okay, wonderful. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the table by Director Redhorse to move both case 6113 and 6116 to a future agenda for further consideration, and a second by Jill Carlson. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously in that case, and we will be considering these again in the future, and certainly we'll do the follow-up outreach and research that was mentioned in the discussion. that concludes our consideration for names, and it brings us now to some fun event planning. Before we do that, though, there's one thing I wanted to bring to the board and get your opinion on. For some of these cases, and I would point to the correcting of spelling. Rather than having full discussions and leaving those as a single agenda item, is this board comfortable with your agenda committee combining those kinds of routine sort of record keeping or administrative type cases into a consent agenda so that we don't have to go through full discussion on them? And certainly any board member who has a concern about anything that's on the consent agenda can request that be pulled for individual consideration, but it would actually help us speed up some of our meeting procedures with those routine, non-controversial items. Is there any opposition to that approach moving forward? Hearing none. In the event we have these, we don't have them every meeting, but when we do, and especially when we can combine multiple simple ones like that into one agenda item, we will. All right, we need to talk about conference planning because somebody volunteered us.
Johnny.
So, I think after being at the conference last month, a couple of things that stood out for me is that, one, it's not a significant undertaking. This is not multiple rooms with different tracks and vendors in the main area and banquet feasts. It really is a single room, likely or ideally in an educational setting with one track, one presenter at a time. And we need to do some legwork to first identify a space. We spoke a lot during the conference about where it would be ideal, and I will already let you know that Grand Junction has been shot down rudely. But we're looking at someplace potentially like Golden that gives us access to some of the more significant recent names that we've considered, like Mount Blue Sky. But that's really part of the committee's consideration and decision. And it'll come down to doing some logistics planning to look at conference or hotel space, availability of educational space. Ideally, we'll do this as inexpensively as possible because we have what, $10,000 allocated? Is that accurate?
Do we have that? I can't
We
remember
have some funding allocated within the DNR's budget to help with this. And one of our goals is to plan the conference this year such that it leaves money in Cogna's coffers because essentially the way that these conferences have been planned is you start with nothing and hope that whatever conference registration comes in makes up the difference. And our hope is that we can plan this in a way that the conference registrations leave some funds in the balance of the conference planning line item in Cogna's budget so that moving forward, they are moving forward with a positive amount in the bank. So that's all part of the consideration here, is making sure that we're doing this in a way that is both a very enriching and positive experience for the conference, that allows as many of our board members as possible to be there and to be ambassadors for our board and for our state. And also that is readily accessible for the people who are coming in. And many of them are single person naming advisory boards. A lot of them are paying this out of pocket, or it's their one continuing or professional development expenditure. So there are a number of considerations that make this not as simple as it seems, but I still think that as conference planning goes, this is not a major lift. But to Commissioner Chimino's comments earlier, we are still a board of volunteers. It is our hope that this does not fall on our staff, and that we can really provide a lot of support to the staff so that they can continue doing the very technical work that we assign them, and we can do the party planning on our own. That said, we need a committee. So do we have volunteers to be part? And this is going to be chaired by Commissioner Chimino. So is that right? I'm kind of just guessing that you're good with that. Good. All right. So we need a committee probably of, 4 or 5 people who are willing to put some effort into making this special. And we'll bring plans back to the whole board so that if there are ideas about additional things to see or speakers to engage, we'll get input from everybody. But if you're really excited about having a little more say in which direction that points as we move along, then I'd really recommend your participation on this board or committee.
And make sure everybody marks down August 19th to the 22nd, 2005 in your calendars. Obviously, I think Johnny and I will be part of the group, and I think we can help kind of coordinate meetings and call folks together. I'll just say this, that and there's a lot of history, and it's actually a unique group of organizations, and I think that these organizations are some of the most overlooked, underappreciated, and under-resourced for the task at hand of naming and renaming places. And some of the other states, their boards might consist of one person. Others are a little bit larger. We've got one of the more robust organizations. Some meet once a year or twice a year. So it runs the gamut. You also have individuals that they are so under-resourced or not supported by their state in some fashion that they actually pay their own ways to these conferences and make it. That being said, we do think that Colorado, because of the Denver airport, is going to be very accessible for a good part of, or for the most of the states here, and expect that this will be one of the larger turnouts. And I think is Anna indicated, even the executive secretary for Cogna, Christine Johnson, who operates out of Nevada, she's one of those individuals that actually just came on board just relatively a few years ago. And at our first Cogna conference, the then board secretary, executive secretary, basically said that this would be the last one. And Christine said, well, this is where, these are my people, and raised her hand, and she has kept it going on her almost single-handedly. Obviously, she has a tremendous level of support from the USBGN and the states, but it is a unique group of organizations, individuals that are part of all of this. There is interest in utilizing Colorado because they would have it in some more kind of remote parts of the states before that are hard to get that to, that limit. So thinking about that, I think also, given where Colorado is in terms of our tribal engagement, I think that we really want to showcase that. And given some of the recent decisions that this board has made in that space, I think that would be really important as part of our toponymic tour to really highlight. And yeah, we were looking at somewhere maybe outside of Denver a little bit. I think Golden makes a lot of sense. I think there's some government and or higher ed institutions that we might be able to take advantage of their spaces, as well as they're very walkable. It's a very walkable community as well. Again, you think about layering on all of the costs. And we try and want to minimize that for the participants to this, essentially. So yeah, that being said, and then I'll just ask certainly for another volunteer. Tim Wolf, Johnny and I have asked or have discussed maybe with the tourism office, if you also wouldn't mind maybe assisting us in sort of kind of setting this up a little bit. We could particularly use, I think, your subject matter expertise and contacts and thought about kind of making this a special, if you wouldn't mind providing some of your time and bandwidth.
Yeah, be happy to look at it. So if we just, once I get the information or whatever it is, we'd be happy to try to look at it and try to make the event special.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
And same, Director Redhorse, I know you're particularly busy, but maybe between you and Stacy as well.
Take care, I would love to be a part of it.
Fantastic.
That sounds fun.
Okay.
So Jill,
Go ahead and add
Okay,
me to the committee.
wonderful.
My boss will his head will explode that I volunteered for yet another meeting.
We promise to be, this is one thing that both Commissioner Chimeno and I promise, we try to be efficient, and we will try to make this, to get everybody on the same page quickly and get us, get tasks assigned so that it's not all work happening in committee, but we bring it back to the committee for work. So we'll try to minimize as much of the wasted meeting time as possible. So I know we have Rich, me, Jill, Director Red Horse. Is there anybody else who's dying to be a part of this? Wow.
If not, that's totally fine. I would ask though, they've done it at some of these conferences, not so much in the past, and I actually did make some outreach, but if you might have any opportunities or specifically any sponsors that you think might be interested in this type of a venue or an event, if you wouldn't mind either providing us some of those contacts or make the outreach yourself. I think the sponsorships are something that have been underused for these conferences, and sort of making them in some respects a more special event, but also bringing down the costs. For instance, I did reach out to the Nature Conservancy, the Wilderness Society, because given their interest in naming and renaming geographic features, and they expressed that they are very open to this and welcome the conversation. And so for those of you that might have some contacts or anybody, organization that might be interested, we'd really appreciate that.
All right. I think that concludes business, and that means that we are now at our public comment portion of our meeting. So I will turn to, there's nobody from the public in person here, so I'll turn to the Zoom call and see if there's anyone who wishes to comment. JD, I'm assuming you'd like to, or are your texts your comments this time? Sorry. JD, can you hear us? All right, is there anybody else who's on here from the public who wishes to make public comment? JD, do we have an option for calling in?
JD is texting in the chat. I think he's texting.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take care of it.
Do you, on the participant list, do you see a phone number in there? Has anybody done that option?
Oh, shit.
It'd be way at the bottom if there was a phone call.
There he is.
Click the ask to unmute, see if that helps.
Okay.
I guess for the record, assuming that that verbal public comment may not happen, I will incorporate, by reading this out loud, I'll incorporate the comment in the chat. Oh, is that you, JD?
Yes, it sure is.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. By the way, it's been a while. Yeah, the reason I mentioned the CSU, changing things, anything dealing with CSU, the land back that's going on, it has a lot to do more or less. And I don't know how to turn the mute off so there's background noise.
We can hear you fine.
The land back effort has been quite controversial, and it's still going on with Fort Collins. So there's a big group of people. As a matter of fact, we just had an event there this last weekend at the Hughes Stadium. And we don't know for sure how far this goes, but we've noticed that a lot of Hughes Stadium land, and even it was given to them by the government, and it was actually part of the tribal areas. And so there's a little bit of effort with this. So as we go on trying to name things that regard the CSU, it might be advantageous, I believe, to include people that are involved in this land back effort, because the lands are far and wide. And if this effort still goes on, it might be of interest. Because what we found out, particularly with the Hughes Stadium, there is no deed. So it may sound arbitrary, you know, to realize that they're trying to change the name, but I believe if we include those members within this effort, I think it's going to show that they're included within whatever CSU is doing, and Larimer County, as a matter of fact. Just something to consider.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else who wishes to give comment today? Hearing no one, I'll
And yes,
close.
I know how to get. And yes, I know how to get a hold of them if you want me to.
Thank you. All right, I'll close the public comment period, and that brings us now to our final item, and that is scheduling our next meeting. And if we can do it in 3 minutes, we are so exactly on time. How far out are we looking? 2 months?
Yeah, we're gonna start bumping like
Squarely
up
into
against the
Christmas.
holiday season. So I think that, 2 months from now will put us into December. I don't think we can do the end of December. It would be probably the first 2 weeks if we can thread that needle. If not, I think we might have to look at the beginning of January.
Okay. I am out for history purposes, actually, from the 4th through the 12th.
Okay.
I'd be fine to do something on the 2nd or the 3rd, but I know that a lot of people are still either on vacation or reeling from coming back from vacation on those days. Does anybody have an opinion about doing it the very first week of the year versus the week of the 14th?
I go to New Zealand on the 16th, so I would prefer to put it off after the early January.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Any no-go days for anybody?
So we're looking at January then?
Yeah, oh, actually, I just realized my flight leaves the evening of the 2nd. I could do it early in the day on the 2nd though, or like noonish.
2nd of
January.
January.
Oh, I don't get back to the 4th.
Wait, when are you? Oh, you get back on the 4th and then you leave on the 16th?
I leave on the 16th of December, back on January.
Oh, okay.
We
No,
thought
no,
you
I'm
were
sorry.
in
I meant,
December.
Yeah.
I might have said, that's because I have my calendar. So week of the 13th is what I meant to say, of January.
Legislators will be in session.
Yeah, I guess, let's see here. Well, Senator Will, you'll be a commissioner, I suppose, by then. You're not at the legislature, right? So, I don't know, Representative Morrow, do you know what your calendar might look like? I know that first couple of weeks in January is going to be a lot of fun that you're particularly looking forward to.
A lot like fun.
Well, knock on wood, hopefully I'll be dealing with lots of fun. Yeah, but I think I'll be pretty settled. And as long as we can do it in the afternoon, I think I can make, the first 10, 15 days of January work without a problem.
Okay. Do we want to look at?
Do we like the days or the evenings?
We've always done evenings for the legislators.
Yeah, we've always done the evenings for the legislators in particular, especially during that time of year. So Representative, Morrow, sorry to interrupt you again here, but I imagine you're going to be in session then, right? So maybe the evening would work better for you and Senator Exum?
Yeah, I believe so.
We don't know if the
I think that week though, I don't think, oh yeah. Yeah, evenings would be best, I would say.
What if we look at the evening of the 16th?
So far, that looks available.
Is that good for everyone else? All right, so we'll do is 5 to 7, 5:15 to 7:15.
I probably have a conflict.
On that day?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. What about the 14th? Tuesday? Conflict. What, is it all day conflicts?
No, it's an evening. It's the JETS program, the Colorado Association of Black Professional Engineers and Scientists.
Okay.
I'm a professional group I belong to is doing a program on Thursday evenings.
Okay.
So 15th, that work?
I have city council on the 15th. We can look at the 21st, 22nd.
Those are good.
I can't do the 22nd in
Okay.
in that evening slot. That 5 o'clock slot won't work for me, but I can do the 21st.
Okay, so does the 21st
You
work
can't
for
do the
everyone?
21st? No, doesn't work for
Oh,
Johnny.
we definitely need John.
Thank you, guys.
The 23rd there then?
I'm here for evening, the governor's citizenship medals event that evening.
Wait. They've got, oh no. Okay, no, it is the 16th. Yeah, can't do the 16th.
We may need to doodle this.
Yeah.
That might be our best bet.
Let me ask, Monday the 13th, is that too much on a Monday?
I have city council that
We've
night
got city
too.
council.
We look back to December 13th real quick.
Right.
Mhm.
We've got, looks like CCI.
We have a CCI meeting until 2. We want to make it all night. It's an all long day on Friday. I'm for it.
Are you really? 13th, not so much, Commissioner over here.
About Tuesday, the 12th.
Thursday, the 12th?
Tuesday, the
Or
12th.
Thursday, December 12th.
November, sorry. Oh, goodness. All right, Thursday, the 12th. I'll be in Denver, so I can make that work.
December the 12th, how's that look for everybody?
Do we want to do 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock? 4?
Tim, I'll be out, but I can send a surrogate for that one.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
Senator Will, did you say 4 or did you say 5? Okay. All right, let's do 4 to 6 p.m. to preserve a little bit of everyone's evenings. And Johnny will send a placeholder calendar invite out shortly, but just put a hold on that for now because that was hard.
That was easy.
That was the most controversial part of our meeting. So well done. All right, is there anything else to come before the board today? Thank you, JD, as well.
Good to see you, JD.
All right, it's good to see all of you. We're adjourned at 2:04 p.m. I'm a failure. Fire me.
Oh, are you kidding? You got a meeting scheduled.
Yeah.
With this many people? That's a huge, huge.